That's right.
Well, hi, Jean. It's good to see you. Good to talk with you. Good to catch up with you. Uh,
Ah, it
it's
is.
it's been a while. Yeah, right.
It's been a while. Well, we've been confined for what almost 3 months now.
Yeah,
So
three
yes, I
months.
mean we were not able to see each other.
Yeah,
That's right.
and prior to that 3 months, you actually were busy. You were really busy. You had just launched your business here in Vegas, and so when you first moved to Vegas, I remember we used to spend a lot of time together. We used to dine together, and just talking about getting to know the food scene here in Vegas together. But I do remember, pretty much the whole last year, you've been so busy with your business, and what have you been up to lately?
Well, regarding my business, I used to live in Macau and Hong Kong in Asia for about 10 years. And during these 10 years, I met a few entrepreneurs who wanted to develop their business in America and more specifically in Las Vegas. It was at the time, after 10 years, that I wanted to come back to America, to the States, and bring my family over. So it was a good opportunity for me to have actually a goal to open this business. This business was to sell to casino, hotels, and restaurants uh, some high-end flatware and plates and glasses and those kind of things. So I was working with a company in Asia who's been on doing that for about 30 years. And so we decided mid last year to come in Las Vegas and to develop this business. And unfortunately, with COVID-19 and the closing of all food and beverage, not only in Vegas, but worldwide, I had to close my business. So basically, that's what happened. One more casualty. I'm sure there were tens of thousands of businesses who are going to close down, or maybe already closed.
Yeah, wow. What a God, what a incredibly stressful turnaround, because I do remember
Yes,
you
and
were.
very sudden.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see your business slowly declining, and you say, well, maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months, let's try to do this, let's try to do that to revive it.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, in that instance, it was instantaneous. It's when one day to the next, they close everything. And not only here, in France, in Europe, in South America, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was very sudden.
Yeah. Well, I'm appreciative that you're here now to talk with me about it, because I've been talking about this thing for months now, and um, it seems that the ominous closure, especially within hospitality, due to restrictions on being able to gather in person. But then, ultimately it comes down to the foundation of the industry. It was built upon small margins and kind of uncertainty and high risk. So, the nature of these conversations that I've been having every Monday is really not to say over and over again these things that we all know and are all kind of having in the back of our mind. Rather, I like to use these conversations to talk about paving the path forward. So, maybe the businesses aren't going to survive, but the people within these businesses and their passion for food will. So, what kind of systems and what kind of culture is going to best support those people, and a future for food, which we can't ignore that. Like, that's something that can't shut down. Food can't shut down because we have to eat still. So how are we going to eat, and how are we going to, um, share hospitality with the world?
Yeah, fortunately, it is in our business, the people who actually are chefs or pastry chef, or sommelier, waiters, bartenders, those people are full of passions. And most of them, as you just said, are not necessarily doing that for the money.
Mm-hmm.
But they do it because they have a true passion for what they do. And so, even though it's a very tough time and people are going to, for the next year probably, they're going to suffer, they will come back because they have this fire in them that will push them forward to open new businesses and to find ways out of it, out of this crisis. So I'm pretty hopeful that if we can't somehow control COVID-19, I think things are going to come back stronger than before.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you say it comes back stronger than before? Do you imagine it's going to be in the same way, like this kind of oversaturation of hospitality providers, or do you think that there's going to be a restructuring of the industry itself?
Well, I mean, I don't know, to be honest. Hopefully, it will be maybe a more quality-oriented food and beverage. That's, I think now, like you said it correctly, I think we had too many restaurants, too many bars, too many of everything. With a lot of them closing, maybe now we can come back and reset the landscape with better quality restaurant and better quality food and beverage overall. Elise, I was in San Francisco last Wednesday, and I stayed there for 3 days. And I talked to a lot of my friends who are restaurateurs. And we were talking to each other. I opened 2 restaurants in San Francisco 15 years ago. They are still open to this day. Of course, now they are closed because of the COVID, but I mean, they are doing very well. And when I opened my restaurant in San Francisco, we had only 800 restaurants in San Francisco. As 3 months ago, just before COVID, we had 4,000 restaurants in San Francisco.
Wow.
Okay. So just in 15 years, those restaurants, everybody with some money, with a dream, open a restaurant, a bar, something. And not all of them were qualified to run those places. So it's almost a natural selection. COVID-19 almost said, you know what, too many of this, too many of that. And maybe we are going to reset everything on a better footing. Mm-hmm. But that's my hope anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely my hope too. But how is that going to look when you look at like the workforce of those 4,000 restaurants in San Francisco alone? If there is going to be a reset, are all of those people involved in that industry going to like immediately find jobs again, or are we going to see kind of not resurgence, but just kind of an evolution of like smaller scale entrepreneurship, smaller scale hospitality versus these large even chains too of restaurants and bars or whatnot. That's kind of the question that I'm curious about.
Yes, I mean, that's the real tragedy, right? It's a human tragedy. I mean, when you've been working in a restaurant for 10 years and all of a sudden you lose your job, especially if you're a little bit older, it's going to be very tough to find the same position elsewhere. And that's really, I mean, once again, I really don't have any answer. And this is a tragedy. I feel for all those people who are losing their job, because I know that just in San Francisco alone this year, we are going to lose 1,000 restaurants. And I went to visit some of those restaurants last week. Some of those restaurants were big names 2 years ago. Some of those restaurants were just open 6 months ago, and they're just going to close it already. Mm-hmm. So, and for every restaurant who are closing, it's 50 jobs, 60 jobs, and so, and I don't know if those people are going to find another position someplace else in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. That's for sure. That is something I think that we can agree upon. But I think something else that we also did already agree on is that those people are still going to exist and their passion is still going to exist.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
I think so.
How can we create the systems to support them and empower them? I don't know. Yeah, maybe we can get that later in the conversation. But I did want to say that I had like my first like fine dining out experience since COVID. This past weekend, I had some friends not friends, but my family from Los Angeles came here for the night on Saturday night just to have a night of entertainment because we've all been cooped up. And we went to the Mayfair Supper Club. Had you had a chance to go there before everything shut down?
I did not have the chance to go there, but some friends of mine went and they were very happy about their experience. They thought it was really a lot of fun actually and great food.
Yeah. So the food was great. The drinks were great. Just one thing on the cocktail. I always like to challenge servers whenever I dine someplace, especially something higher value like that. And I was able to stump the bartender on something, but overall the food was great. The drinks were great. The wine was great, and it was entertaining. Like there's a stage and there's performers, and it was a little awkward because the performers were like wearing masks. Yeah. They were in like sequence masks that matched their dresses and stuff. It was pretty funny. But I was really impressed by the experience, and it was a very high value experience. The check was very high, but my family at the same time was like, we haven't done anything.
So happy.
Yeah, they were so happy. It's like we haven't spent any money on entertainment the past 3 months. We haven't done anything. Right. So this was it. And it felt like a very safe experience, a very safe night out because we weren't like moving, bar to bar, cocktail lounge, venue to venue, like how the Vegas Strip, a night out usually is. We were able to go to one place, we got our entertainment, we got our food, we got our beverage. We were actually there for over 4 hours.
Wow.
And it was great, so I was like really impressed by that. And I really felt like maybe that's a model, that could be exciting for fine dining, is figuring out additional value adds other than just the food and the drink, to create a night out experience that, could warrant, a check that has a higher value amount to support the infrastructure, for the business.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know. We'll see.
What will be interesting to see as well after this COVID-19 crisis, if that people, are they going to go out as often as they used to? I was talking to a friend of mine who's an architect in San Francisco, and he's entertaining clients and himself actually also. He goes out all the time. And I know him for a long time. He used to come to my place in San Francisco, to my restaurant in San Francisco 3 times a week. And I was talking to him this week, and I said, are you going to go out as much? And he said, no, I just discovered a new way. I cook more, I go to the farmer's market, I buy my food, I come home, I'm looking forward to make me a small meal. And and I also realized, to be quite frank, that I'm saving a lot of money doing so.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of truth to that, which is going to, support how we get our food. But I still think, maybe now there's still some novelty to that. I think, by next year, by 2 years from now, maybe people will be a little bit tired of cooking every meal for themselves.
Of course.
But the frugality piece of it is probably still going to remain important for most people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think people also realize how fragile our society is. That everything from one day to the next can stop. And that's not a good feeling. We're talking earlier about those people who are losing their job, and of course we are focusing our thought on the chefs and sous chefs and waiters and etc. But we also have to think of all the farmers in America and all the people who actually. I have a friend of mine again in San Francisco, and I've been there 20 years. I lived in San Francisco for 20 years. I know a lot of people. So one of my friends is a food distributor in San Francisco, and he's telling me he has job only for 2 days. So he delivered the restaurant or the few restaurants who are doing takeout on Monday and on Friday. And he said, in between, there is no need for me to hire more drivers to do all that. So there is a lot of people who are impacted, not only directly the chefs and the pastry chefs and other people in the industry.
Yeah, what's his face? Tom Colicchio?
Colicchio?
Yeah, he was on a show and he threw out the figure 20 million people as the whole value chain from the farm to the restaurant. 20 million people. So yeah,
I believe that.
That's a lot of people. That is an addressable population of people, and again, most of which have passions.
Yes.
And also most of which are coming from marginalized, minority communities as well.
You're right. Absolutely.
So, that's very relevant to other things that are going on right now. And I think that it is appropriate to mention that in empowering that community and empowering our food system, we are actually addressing, some very deeply rooted issues, that are causing protests and a lot of uncomfortable conversations right now. So,
yes.
20 million people. That's a lot of people, and then some other stats I've read online is 40%. I mean, some people even say something like 70% of restaurants won't open again.
That may be a bit much.
Yeah.
That's a bit much. But I would say 40%, it could be accurate. Like I said, San Francisco, about 1,000 will not reopen. That we know of. So I'm sure a lot more people are going. And every day, in a newspaper, every day you can see, this restaurant will not reopen after 30 years being in business, And so, it's alarming.
Yeah.
I was in Cupertino in California last week, Friday. And I went to a place where actually it's right near the Apple campus. And there is a lot of restaurants there. All those restaurants were open, actually, open for takeout, and also the terrace was open. They were open. So, depending also on the location of your restaurant and where you are, you have maybe a better luck to restart your business.
I want to ask a question about chefs in particular, and and this is something that you can answer from your experience prior to pandemic. What was the condition of empowerment and dignity for the chef within the restaurant industry, right? So maybe let me give a little more context to help you with the question. When I had bartender and server come talk with me, the thing that we came to conclusion of is that there's not a whole lot of dignity in the career of service. Maybe chefs have some dignity, like there is some kind of celebrity, kind of around, chefs that make a name for themselves and make a brand for themselves. But even around that celebrity, how is the dignity itself? Are these chefs sometimes as a consumer, as a foodie, we think, oh, the chef is the owner of the business. The chef gets to make all the shots. Is that the reality? Or, how, the business, are there usually other investors that actually have the power? Or how is that generally?
Elise, in order to open a restaurant, let's say you want to open from scratch a 90-seat restaurant, which is it's not big, it's not small, it's in between. 90-seat restaurant will cost you about $2 million. So if you're a chef, okay, and you're talented and you want to do things, you want to open your own place, you need to turn to investors. You need to seek investors, okay, and those investors who believes in you will open a restaurant for you, and after that you just go over there and work. Of course, they will give you some conditions, and they will tell you what they like and this and that. But to come back to the dignity of it, I think our profession, I mean, what I could see, because I know so many chefs, went to so many restaurants. I mean, people are well treated overall. I mean, I don't know if this is the answer you wanted me to say, or if the question I answer your question correctly. But I mean, I think, when you go to a good restaurant, I mean, you can see the crew. Most of them are open kitchen anyway, so you can see them working in a very clean environment, and they are well treated and very well respected. I know that for my part. I always respected my crews. And when I had two restaurants in the Bay Area, I had 150 employees, and I love those guys. I mean, they are like families to you, because you understand early on is without them. I don't care what kind of name you have. You can be a celebrity chef on TV and everything. If you don't have a great crew behind you to support you, you go nowhere.
Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, yeah, I guess what I was, trying to get at is, do you ever hear of stories? I'm sure that there's successful stories with like great investors that are empowering and on the same page and growing together. But
yes,
there also should be stories on the other side of the spectrum where the investors put too much pressure on the chef, where the chef can't treat their crew well and can't, are kind of like stuck in a situation where they ultimately create those toxic work environments that we hear about, in back of house.
Yeah, I think, I mean, investors by definitions are people who wants to invest and make money and have a return. Okay, and the largest return they have, the better, the happier they are. So that's why when I always say to, if I meet an investor and the guy say, we'd like to open a restaurant with you, okay, I will talk about the concept that I want to put together, but also I will tell him and tell him and tell him again that the profit in a restaurant business, if you run a good restaurant, is between 8% to 13%. That will depend on the type of concept you have. And that happened not too long ago. A couple of months ago, I was talking casually with a friend, and I said, like I said that to her, I said, the profit is basically between 8 and 13, most likely 9 and 10. She said, that's all? I said, yes. What were you expecting? I said, maybe 50%. I said, no, never. So if you're really upfront with your investor and say, you're going to have prestige. If you open a good restaurant and you're involved in that restaurant as an investor, you're going to have prestige. It's great to bring your friends, to business associate, to your own place and have a great meal. You can shine,
Mm-hmm.
But the return on money is 10%, and sometimes less.
Yeah. Yeah, those aren't good numbers for investors. So, it's good if you're forward, if you're upfront with the investors about this, and if they truly, have the passion just as much as the chef has, then it'll work out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
I would think that there's probably a lot of investors that exploit their power, because there's that power dynamic, and this doesn't just happen in the restaurant industry, it happens also in the tech industry, with venture capitalists. That's the experience that I have with investors, is that there's this expectation, and then if you don't meet that expectation, it's very easy for them to dismiss you and want to take over and do it better themselves, thinking they can do it better themselves. So I'd imagine that happens a lot in restaurants,
Yes,
especially
you
for,
see,
yeah, go ahead.
you see, for example, if the investor spent $2 million with a chef, okay, and the return on investment is not as large as he was hoping for, okay, he can try to put pressure. What kind of pressure can he put on a chef? Tell him to reduce the portions, increase the prices. It's very dicey because you never know if you increase the prices, maybe you're going to lose some of your clients. You're going to say you're too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to play this game very carefully. And at the very end, in a normal economy, let's say that the investors put too much pressure on the chef, and the chef decide to leave and to seek another job. The investor is in trouble. His investment is in trouble, And in San Jose, in California, 6 or 7 years ago, a friend of mine opened a restaurant, and the restaurant happened to be very successful. It was an Italian restaurant. He brought a chef from Italy, and he got 1-star Michelin. Okay, great. So the chef naturally went to see the investors and said, you know what? I just brought you a star. Now the restaurant is full for lunch and dinner. I would like to make more money, okay, or maybe even become a partner. And the investor says, sorry, he just tried to play a dirty game with the guy. The guy left, the chef left, and now the restaurant is closed. So you see, the investors sometimes do not have, they may think they know, or they may think they have more power, but you know what? The people in the kitchen or people in the front of the house, they have also equally as much power. And I do believe that when you're building a team, you're opening a restaurant, you're building a team, you're choosing carefully your chef, your sous chef, your pastry chef, the sommelier, the hostesses, the whole gang, right? After a few months working with them, they become your family. Those people are your family. You want to take care of them, And, if you take care of them well, they will also take care of you. And it's a win-win situation. I could not work in a restaurant when people are fighting, people are not happy with each other. Not that I want to talk to me about my own experience too much, but in San Francisco, I opened a restaurant 20 years ago, and this restaurant is still open today. Last week, one of my head bartender called me just to say hello. He said, how are you doing? So I keep track. Actually, I do keep track with all my ex-employees. I'm very happy that one of my sous chefs opened a very successful restaurant in Sunnyvale in California. That's just something that you just keep track of because they become your family.
Yeah. So, imagine this. Imagine if opening a restaurant actually only costs $200,000 instead of $2 million.
Uh-huh.
How different that situation would be. How much more empowering that situation would be for a chef to be able to do things a bit more autonomously versus having to find the right investor. And that those are kind of the ideas that I like to bring to the table in this conversation versus working in the same conditions. And it means that it's going to have to be different. Maybe real estate's going to be different. The experience is going to be different.
I will tell you, if a chef today loses his job, okay, because COVID-19, if the guy is good, okay, there is so many restaurants who will not reopen. So many restaurants. The guy, even if he doesn't have a lot of money, can probably talk to his family like all of us did before. Family, friends, and try to put a little bit of money and invest it in a restaurant. I actually visited some restaurant last week in California. I went to Napa. I went to different places. And they're turnkey operation. They are absolutely turnkey operation with equipment. You just give them, and they are willing to work with you. So of course you need some money. You need some working capital. You need to buy the wine and those kind of things, obviously. But nevertheless, there is great opportunity out there for people who just lost their job. I know it's a bit crazy to say, and maybe the guy is just lost his job and he can come up with $200,000, but actually, there, $200,000, you may find that kind of a money, and you may find people who will believe in you and will back you up, because $200,000 after all is not that much, and you can find a lot of restaurant turnkey operation.
Yeah. So is that a prediction?
I was completely amazed.
Is that a prediction that you have for where a lot of the restaurant industry is going to go? A lot of talent is going to kind of bootstrap new things like this?
I think so. I mean, cool. If you're a talented chef, you don't want to just, what are you going to do? You're still going to be a talented chef next month or the month after, right? Mm-hmm. And what you want to do? You want to cook. Those people are very resourceful. They will find a way to open a place, to open a restaurant. And once again, I mean, all those restaurants who are going to close, the landlords will be willing to make a deal. Okay, I'm not saying that you're going to get there with $10,000, but with $200,000, yeah, you can get there. You can open a restaurant for $200,000. So many out there are closing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
What about personal chef, that, that area? Do you think that there's going to be some growth of those opportunities as well?
So chefs working for movie stars or very wealthy people?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure that that's going to change that much, because there is a huge market out there. I have some of my friends who are working in New York for very wealthy people in the Hamptons. One friend in particular, I've been working for the same family for 15 years. So those jobs exist and they are very well paid. And of course, this is an avenue that some people want to explore. Absolutely.
Yeah. I just think it might be if people are spending more time at home and not feeling as confident, going out in public, there may be an increased demand for personal chefs and for those kinds of services, or, hosting more dinner parties in home.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it will not cost you much money, or maybe even cost you less money, actually, to hire a chef to come to your house and to cook for an evening for 6 or 8 people, and to have a fantastic evening at your own house, especially if you have a beautiful house here in Las Vegas. And hiring a chef will not cost you that much money. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a different way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's cool. What are the legalities around that? Permitting,
Well, for an evening, I mean, if you bring the neighbor and you ask him to cook paella, the legality is the same as you bring a chef in your house. Basically, there is not that much. The guy is not going to make so much money that evening that he has to report it to the IRS. At least I don't think so. I think it's perfectly legit in this day and age. And legality is perfectly fine. I don't think there is any problem with that.
That's good to know. Yeah, because I know, even if you want to, for instance, here, if I wanted to start serving some food, I would need to get a whole bunch of other equipment and different permitting and licensing to do that. So it's kind of cool that this whole personal chef movement could be a lower risk, lower investment opportunity for a chef to continue, making good quality food.
Yeah, but it's usually one-time thing. It's some people can make a living out of it, obviously. But if every chef who just lost their job just go into personal chefing in houses, that's not going to work either. I think my personal recommendation is to seek out some opportunity out there. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't have money, you will find people who will be more than happy to give you some money to start your own business and to become a partner. Yeah. I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So then my next question is that so like let's say a chef does do that, they put together some funds, and more than likely the majority of those funds are going to be reserved as like operating capital for rents
Yes.
and for um, so there probably will be a culture of frugality even among fine dining. Like, what are some things, your priority list of like the top things that chefs are going to keep and will continue to prioritize as far as ingredients? And, they're not going to skimp on quality of certain things versus, lower on the list the things that are going to be more prone to be left out.
But that's a difficult question, Elise. I think a good chef who loves what he's doing will always go for quality ingredients. If I had to open a restaurant today, I will reach out to farmers personally. I will try to go visit the farm, try to have a relationship with them, because I mean we need to support those people.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of quality ingredients, those people are, the one who can provide you with really high quality ingredients. Very often, I mean, in Napa, for example, there is obviously a lot of farmers. When a chef make a menu for the week, say that is going to put 10 special, maybe two special per day, different special, he's calling actually the farmers. What do you have coming? I think this is the way we need to work. I know I'm not answering your question completely.
Yeah, no, it's okay. You're answering though. You're giving good information.
But
So
I
thank
mean,
you.
in terms of quality, I think this is really. I mean, I don't think because you open your own restaurant. On the contrary, if you open your own restaurant and you have investors who are with you as a partner, he wants you to shine, and he wants this restaurant to offer the best quality possible. So I think there is no. I mean, there is no chance because they open a restaurant that is going to just lower the quality. I'm not quite sure I understand. I'm not quite sure I understand I'm not sure I answer your question correctly on this one.
Okay, yeah. It's a hard question, and yeah, but I think it's already a trend, and definitely you can read about it. Like that's kind of what the talk of the chef world is right now, of this simplicity in the menu. So that they can hone in on good quality products, but their supply chain can be more streamlined and less risky. So instead of having these vast menus that require a inventory of a bunch of high quality ingredients, kind of limiting that list of ingredients to focus on a shorter list of high quality ingredients. So simplifying the menu. So yeah, I was just like wondering from your experience working with chefs, being a chef yourself, yeah, like what are some things that chefs like always prioritize? Like, I'm not going to compromise on this. Is it wine, or is it meats, or is it, and I definitely know tea is on the lower side of that list. I know that. But yeah, that was my question. Maybe rephrasing it that way can help you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think the ingredients in general, but I mean, yeah, meat, fish, or vegetables. Vegetables, if you work with vegetables in season, they are less expensive. So sometimes you go to see menus and you have something on tomato, for example, in the midst of the winter. I never understood that. So if you, I think chefs knows they know those kind of things. They're just very agile in their mind. They know how to create menus. They know how to use the best quality possible, the best ingredients. With not necessarily the most expensive one. I think that's something who's going to go is the most expensive ingredients, because I think people are going to have a bit. I think people are going to be a bit more cautious about spending money in a restaurant. So I think for all those restaurants reopening, the value will be very important. Okay, and before you could maybe spend a lot of money on a dinner, but people now we are going to be a little more cautious. Mm-hmm. And I've been talking to a friend of mine who actually is fairly wealthy, and he told me that he was going to in the future looked at it a bit more carefully, look at the expenses more carefully. So if you can open a restaurant and offer great value, great food at a good price, still making a good living, I think that's the key.
Yeah. So there's two ways that you can address that. One of them is to be more frugal in your sourcing and making your offerings more approachable and more affordable, or increasing the value. So like the case with like Mayfair, like the bill was very high, but the value, perceived value of that experience was much more than just the food and the drink. It was like a whole, going out entertainment package. And so, yeah, I think that could be a way of addressing that. So that's interesting. Even the very wealthy people are adopting a culture of frugality in some sense.
They do because, for the past 3 months, they've been at home like all of us, and they realize that they've been spending a lot of money on entertaining before the COVID-19. So now for those 3 months, they realize how much money they've been saving because they don't have any choice. And in some cases, it's very substantial. So I think they're going to look at it in a different way now. But once again, that doesn't mean they're not going to go out as often. They're just going to be a bit more frugal. Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing. So for a restaurant to be successful, I think they should offer some great food, interesting food, different, but also be mindful of the value.
So is this advice that you would give to restaurant owners across the entire spectrum, from, like fast casual to, Michelin star dining, or is this advice for a specific segment of the industry?
No, I think it's a segment for the whole industry, actually. There is the Michelin star chefs. They have a prestige. Okay, if you're a restaurant with 2-star Michelin and your clients expect to have expensive ingredients, so maybe those people are less sensitive. But for a chef in a 2-star Michelin, it's very difficult not to offer expensive ingredients like a foie gras, caviar. That's what people expect. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Sometimes, if you don't put a dollop of caviar on top of a fish, it's okay too. Mm-hmm. And that will cut the price by $30. Yeah. So of the dish. So I think people are mindful. I understand also the chef who actually, another example, a friend of mine has one of the best restaurants in New York. He's a 3-star Michelin, and he's wondering, as of 3 weeks ago, if he was going to reopen, because he said in my price point, he doesn't want to lower the quality, and he actually, without lowering the quality, he still wants to play with very expensive ingredients. Mm-hmm. So he was just saying, I'm not sure I'm going to reopen, because if I cannot use the ingredient that I love to use, who are extremely expensive, mm-hmm. Maybe it's not worth it. The second thing that also people tend to forget a little bit, when you close a restaurant for 3 months, okay, so basically you reopen a restaurant from scratch. Even for a small restaurant, let's say, once again, 50, 90 seat restaurant, you need to put some money, for operating. You have to buy all the food, everything. It's $20,000. So that's for a small restaurant. Now, if you have a 3-star Michelin in New York, it can go much higher than that. And not everyone has the cash flow to do it. So also that's why people just give up on their restaurant. They said, I'm sorry, but I will not have $40,000, $60,000 to reopen my restaurant. And also the third point is a lot of people, as we know it is, and I had confirmation of that in San Francisco this week, when people want to reopen their restaurant, actually their staff, they don't find the staff anymore. They don't find their cook. So some of them have been working with the same crew for 8 years, and all of a sudden, those people disappear on them. So for all those reasons, sometimes they just say, well, if I cannot work with all my crew, might as well. They don't have the energy to retrain a new crew. It takes so long to train a crew. So they just decide to just close the restaurant for all.
Yeah.
And so we have the people who are going to reopen restaurants have so many questions and so many challenges that they're going to need to face. And also, we don't know if people are actually going to come back to restaurant. Now, of course, you go to look at restaurant and they are busy. I mean, people are tired of being home, so they want to go out, they want to drink and this and that. But in 3 months or in 4 months, are they still going out?
Yeah. Well, and especially as more restaurants open up, so then there's more places, for people to go. Because right now it's kind of limited. Like, I went to the Bellagio for the Mayfair Supper Club, and it was packed. I couldn't believe it. The Bellagio was friggin' packed, and no one wearing masks. There was very little opportunity for social distancing, so... and I think that was just a factor of there's a limited number of casinos that are open on the strip. So, so Bellagio may be doing good business now, but once the whole strip opens, the business will be diluted, to a degree. And then also,
but you see,
you go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, please. No, well, I lived in Macau in Asia for a few years. Macau is a place where people come only for gambling. They have amazing restaurants. They are star Michelin also. But the Chinese, they don't go to those places. They just go, they come to Macau to gamble. Here is a different ball game. Here in Las Vegas, people come for shows. They come for clubs, like Akasan. They come from different... the offering is more diversified. But so I'm not sure if people actually are going to want to come back to Las Vegas just to go to a restaurant.
Yeah.
If you don't have a show, sometimes you go to Vegas because you want to see a show and you don't. A lot of people don't gamble. Yeah. But I don't know, maybe I hope I'm completely wrong and people are going to come, and that's going to be fine. But for me, personally, I will never go to a place where I cannot really have a great meal, which you said that you had yesterday, which is great. But to me, when I used to come to Vegas, now I live in Vegas, but when I used to come to Vegas from San Francisco, I used to go to see a show. I used to go to a club. I love that with my friends. We always go to clubs and everything. But now there is and the clubs it's going to be complicated for them to reopen anytime soon.
Yeah.
And the biggest business center or the business model of Las Vegas is been built around convention. Convention brings money to Vegas. Okay, and without convention, we are going to have issues. And I'm not even sure that all the restaurant casinos are going to open. Maybe Bellagio, of course, they may open all their restaurants, but I know other casinos, they might not open all their restaurants.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge. And some of these restaurants just opened. I remember I dined out at the Slanted Door, right before their grand opening. And then COVID happened. And what a nightmare.
It's a disaster for the owner of Slanted Door. It's a complete disaster. First of all, they were very late. They could not get their permit. It took them at least almost a year, or at least 8 months more than the opening schedule. And now COVID-19 struck probably, 2 weeks after they opened?
I think less than their grand opening. I went 2 weeks before, but that was like soft opening. I went with Chef Janine. She had gotten an invite.
I see.
Yeah, so I got to go dine there before they had even opened. And I had a friend that was a pastry chef there, and she has
Hmm.
no prospect of going back to work.
Oh, that's terrible. I
Yeah,
hate to hear that. I
yeah,
just so it's really sad. It's really sad. And also, we should also talk about the people who actually are the backbone of most of restaurants, which are the Latinos, and those people, for not all of them, of course, but a fraction of them don't have the right papers to work, but nevertheless they've been working, they've been finding a job. Like, this is something that happened in America for at least 100 years. In San Francisco, I mean, most of my kitchen were Latinos, and they were amazing. You know, so when those people lose their job and they have a family and they cannot go for an employment, I
hmm
don't know what those people are going to do. I have no idea,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's heartbreaking, really.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear some of those stories because yeah, I mean I don't hear about them. I can just only imagine and wonder what people are going through. I do hear the stories of my friends that work in service, and they in the beginning there was a lot of stress and uncertainty. Oh, unemployment's not working for me. This thing is not working. But then maybe like a month or so in, it set in for them, and then when we start reopening and their jobs are getting called back, like they're not so excited about going back. A lot of them are getting lower pay offer than what they had before, just because the restaurant is anticipating lower traffic and higher resources required. So yeah, they don't want to go back to that. And then also additionally, something I've heard is that a lot of the work environments have become quite toxic, just because management is under so much pressure.
Yeah,
Um, that it's really difficult for them to maintain that like friendly family like work environment for the crew. Um, and then turnover too. So like you have these crews where it's like a lot of new people in
yeah.
addition to the people that were there before, and so rebuilding that culture and everything has been a challenge. Um, okay, so something I want to ask about. Yeah, I talked about this when we met, a few weeks ago for dinner. Which yeah, thank you again for having me over. That was a very special experience.
You're
I've been
welcome.
I've been waiting
Mhm.
years to taste your food, John. Finally, it happened. um, but my enthusiasm around like very casual food preparation, such as street food. It doesn't necessarily have to be street food, but street food is a very good example of this like very very casual, very fast. Like, do you think that there is an opportunity of even like high prestige talent, to find a place within that kind of food preparation? And I like to pull from the movement in like Singapore, where a street food vendor was given the first Michelin star. Do you think that there's any hope for opportunity for that here in the states?
I think so. I do believe so. You're talking about a food truck, for example?
Not even food truck. So food truck is. I mean, I've heard numbers that a food truck you would need at least 250,000 to get a food truck up and rolling.
Hmm.
I'm talking about something even more casual than that. I mean, even operating out of a home. Like, Jean, I kid you not, and you can ask my mom about this. The best meal that we ever enjoyed was in like a ranchac little like house in St. John, just outside of St. John in Antigua, which is that's something that we have that connection that we both lived in Antigua. It was just out of this Rasta man's house, and he was like
Yeah.
frying fish and making these like beautiful meals, and you just come into his house and sit down and have a meal. You know, it was like very affordable. He was very happy. He was getting paid more than enough, and yeah. That maybe that's, you know, even some of the level of street food that I'm really enthusiastic about, you know, seeing happen here.
I mean, I think that's something you can do is if you're a talented chef. I mean, you can do that for a limited period of time. But the true action will be to open your own place. Even though I have a friend of mine in Oakland, in California, who's been cooking from his house. He loves to cook, and he's just doing it. He used to do it on Friday and Saturday just for neighbor, and then he grows. But now he's averaging about 60 people, so not just to go food, obviously. And people call him and he said, "What's the dish of the day?" And he said, "Okay, this is what I'm serving."
Yeah.
And he's between 60 and 80 now. Wow. Cover, because people were confined in their home.
Yeah.
And that was a perfect way to just come out, just get your meal for the night. And it works. Everything can work. If you offer good quality stuff, everything can work.
So he was just doing that out of his home kitchen?
Why not?
Cool.
If he has a nice home, nice home or not a nice home, but I mean, if he has a home that's well equipped, you know, if he can put something out, everybody does actually.
Yeah.
And why not? Why not?
Yeah. Well, because of the health code, the health department,
temporary.
You know, hammering down on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just something that you can do for a few months maybe. But the main focus will be to find investors to open your own place.
Yeah. Cool.
There is a lot of people who wants to open a restaurant. A lot of people who will be willing to give you money to open your own.
Yeah, it's a very good point. You know, that the all of the shut down businesses are going to be turnkey opportunities for for others. So that was something that I didn't really think too deeply about. But
yeah, I mean, I was shocked actually, you know, to see the quality of restaurants who are on the market now. You know, it was just mind-boggling. And we went to visit a Japanese restaurant who opened about 6 months ago, upmarket in San Francisco. And this restaurant, they spent $1 million into this restaurant, and the owner do not wish to reopen after COVID. So basically, they were open for 6 months. It's brand new, and he's on the market. He's on the market now.
Wow.
I mean, just small deposit and you're in.
Yeah. Small deposit. Let's do it, Jean. Let's go open a restaurant.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Jean, I want to introduce you to my friend Joe. He just joined us. He's one of our partners that works in South Dakota.
Wow, excellent.
Yeah.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, John.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man.
Good.
Doing awesome. You guys can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Everything's cool here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Except for outside. It's not cool outside, Jean.
Yeah, I know. What is it today? 91 degrees?
It's honestly about the same here.
Oh, really? You guys
it's
are
been
hot
warm
there?
lately. I think we're going to hit 100 in certain areas tomorrow. I think that's the hottest day of the week. So.
Wow.
Okay.
Gotta get that iced tea ready. So, Joe, how is everything in South Dakota? I know you guys kind of never even really had a lockdown per se, and started opening up far sooner. How is the climate there with all the restaurants you work with?
Well, the governor never really, she got some flack for it, but she never really instituted anything mandatory, and kind of left it in the hands of most of the business owners for the most part. And so you see more of the corporate, larger scale businesses with owners coming from other places instituting the same stuff that they have going on in the bigger cities, So like our Walmart shut down their overnight shift, and, they're only letting people in and out of one door, and, that kind of stuff. Everybody's, the masks aren't required, but there's a big sign that says, please wear a mask when you come in, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a lot of the local businesses that have just taken it a little bit less intensively. So, but as far as closures go, I was actually going to bring that up. I wrote a bunch of notes on your conversation because I love what you guys were talking about. But the closures I find depend on the location and the amount of excess that certain places have. So, in Las Vegas, there is just an abundance of excess. There are, or in San Francisco, like you were talking about, there is a lot of everything. Whereas when you come from a place like I do, there isn't a whole lot of fat to trim off anyway. So most of the places here survived, I think, as far as I know, and I'm fairly well informed about our local area, but one restaurant that I know of was going to close down permanently. They announced it and everything. And then a couple weeks later, they were like, hey, never mind, basically. So I can't name a single place that actually shut down because of all of this.
Yeah.
Not around here anyway. Yeah. Not in the western half of South Dakota. I don't know about the eastern half so much, but most of the businesses around here have been able to supplement with, curbside and drive-through and things like that. And it's a small community, so we tend to support each other. I think 70 or 80% of the businesses just in the town that I live in Spearfish, are locally owned. So you find that the local community is still supporting these places as much as they can. And so these places have had to adapt and change and then can go back to some sort of normalcy, but nobody has really closed. We're starting to get back at things. The farmers markets are opening up and, things like that. So it definitely hasn't hit us like it has these big metropolises. But I feel like that's just simply because there is so much excess, and that's what this thing has. That's what this whole entire deal has been attacking is all that fat, all that extra fat.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
In America, it's pretty fat, so I can see how that.
Who you calling fat?
I can see that. I can see how that happens. We have a problem with overconsumption and things like that, and this has really put that into perspective of like how much extra we have.
Yeah,
I think things, it's kind of shifting to people valuing quality over quantity more. It's going to take some time, but I think that's slowly the direction that we're headed. So.
Now, with your clients that are reopened and you're, distributing product to them again, have you noticed any change in their demands or in their purchasing than prior to pandemic?
It's kind of split. We have some clients that have really kind of just dropped off the map for a little while, and I think they're waiting to really get back at it when there is no when there's not as much of a hassle. There's the people who are ready to like do whatever they can to get open along every step of the way, and then there's other people that are just like, we're just going to hang out, and when things level out, then we'll come back full force, Yeah. So it's kind of split down the middle with our clients. But as far as demand goes, I do think there is consistently, and I'm working in real small margins here, but there is consistently more and more demand for higher quality products. Great. I mean, it's just it's fairly consistent, and it has been though even before COVID. This just kind of accelerated that process.
Yeah.
People are looking for better stuff because you can go on any street corner and find a cheap, crappy meal, or just like something very just generic and not a whole lot of love put into it. But people don't want that anymore. You can find that everywhere. People want that. That love and that pride put into the stuff that they're consuming, that they're the entertainment that they're having, all that stuff. People are looking for more quality, and I love that. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm in this business. So
yeah. You had messaged me saying that you were having some concerns around value and communicating your value. I'd love to hear like more what you were asking in regards to that.
Well, that's something I've struggled with for a long time. Is the overall concept here that I'm talking about is value, but the particular aspects are pricing. How do you value your product? How do you decide what your product is worth? Not simply based on just arbitrary numbers. I feel like there should be more meaning there. And really the only concrete variables that I have are like cost of goods and like what other people are charging and things like that. And there's such a wide range of factors there. It's really hard to decide, how much do I charge my wholesalers for bulk tea? And then on the other side, how much do I charge for my retail product? Because we're in a little bit of every type of business, and then how much do I charge for my services and my time, like workshops and tastings and things like that. It kind of seems like I'm just throwing numbers out there, and I never really feel confident in the numbers that I'm putting out there. So it's been a difficulty for me since day one.
Yeah, maybe when Jean comes back, we can ask him, because he's worked on both sides, right? He's most of his experience is being a chef and building restaurants and building menus and building crews and whatnot. Oh, he's back. Oh, he got his tea. Good for you, Jean. It's a proper tea party now.
Yes.
So yeah, Jean, like, what is your, if you could provide some feedback, because you've been on both sides of the spectrum, from, being a chef and being the buyer to being the vendor, especially a vendor of someone providing such high value product. Your company was probably the top of the line, right? So how do you value your services and your product as a whole?
Well, it's very difficult, actually, and difficult to. I think there is a trust that you have to. If your client trusts you to really sell a very good product, high quality ingredients, they will pay anything you want them to pay, without asking any questions.
Right.
So, and it's really it takes a long time to develop the trust with your clients. I think when you have it, it's you're basically home free, but it takes a long time, and also a lot of communication, because people. Let's take tea, for example. People have no clue about tea. That's really sad, because tea is such an amazing beverage. And we all know the way it works in China. We all went to those tea gardens, in China, and look at those people that are slaving, every day, and working so hard with so much pride to offer us an amazing product. And people don't even look at it. People refuse to pay the right price for this product. How can we transmit this passion to the people who are going to buy the product?
Right.
So, Elise and probably yourself as well are doing a great job. You are there. You do those shows. You have pictures. You can say, I went to Yunnan. I went to different places in China. This is what I see. And you can elevate the value of your product that way, by communicating, because people don't know. You have to assume that even if people say, "Oh yeah, I know tea," they are clueless. It's really sad.
Earl Grey is my favorite. I really like Earl Grey.
Yeah, I get that a lot. That oolong. People are like, "Oh, do you have oolong?" And like, that's as far as they go. I'm like, "There's types of oolong?" And I'm like, "Yeah, a bunch of them." So I think they just heard the word and remembered it. So they were like, "Oh yeah, that sounds fancy,"
Well,
but I think the people who could help actually are the restaurateur, because the restaurant could actually be a good relay between you and the consumer. But the problem that we are facing in a restaurant business is that there is no demand for good tea, unfortunately. So of course you can force it down the throat of your clients. You say, "This is what I have. I have those 60s, and that's it, and this is the price for it." The people are going to say, "Wow, so expensive." So, after that, you have the sommelier, we have the waiter, who hopefully share a certain passion for your product, for the tea, who's going to just put a good word into the product and try to sell it to the customer and say, yes, it is expensive, but imagine how difficult it is to get those teas, but I mean, I think restaurant will be really the people that you need to work with in order to push your product forward. Because in terms, they will talk to their clients, they will talk to the customer, and they will just explain to them how, because you don't really, you meet the people, but you don't meet necessarily the clients that we are meeting. On top of that, we have volume in a restaurant. In a restaurant, you can touch 150 to 200 people a day. So I know Elise doesn't really care to go to a restaurant and to meet necessarily the people who works in a restaurant. But I think, Elise, you will be wonderful doing it. You will be great. Just sharing your passion with the sommelier and the waiters. People love wine, for example. The waiters, they love to sell wine. And when they talk about it, for most part, they know what they're saying. And the same thing should happen with tea.
So the challenge there, though, is that the waiters make a good tip on a bottle of wine. So I think that's
are people tipping off of the tea? That's a whole different story. Yeah. Well, we've made that kind of a priority. For the sake of the tea, we find it disrespectful to the tea itself if the people serving it don't know how to brew it. And that's a big thing for us. So we always offer our services to, can we come in and train your staff? Can we have a day with your staff or a couple hours at the end of shift or in your split shift or whatever on one of your closed days to bring in the majority of your staff, and we all sit down and me and my partner lay everything out and kind of talk to you about it and kind of instill some of our passion and our respect for the tea into you so that you take it more seriously, so that you know what you're talking about when you're talking to your clients. And we try and make that a priority. Unfortunately, not every restaurant is like that. And some of them are, not the kind of restaurant that can support something like that.
That's true.
We definitely want to make that bond with their employees just as much as we do with their owners. So then when we come in to drop tea off, they're like, oh, hey, Joe, how you been? Da, da, da. Even if I'm not talking to the owner, they know who I am. They know what I've got. They know the questions they can ask me. That's a big deal to us. Absolutely.
There is something really, in a restaurant business, if you're really busy in your dining room, and you're just, people are waiting, you have to clear the table and everything, the last thing you want to do is to sell a cup of tea that you're going to need sometimes to brew correctly, okay, and to nurture this cup of tea in a way that should be nurtured, right? And very often the waiters, they don't have the time. They want to turn the table to the next people, right?
Yep.
So if you have 12 people waiting, so the waiter are basically rushing to give you the check, kick you out of the place and sit the next 6 people. So the last thing they want is to spend an extra 20 minutes, talking about the tea, because it's the last thing that basically is being served in a restaurant, coffee or tea. And people wants to get you out and to reset the table and to get to the next customer. And this is something that's complicated. And also what I find out as an operator, as a restaurant operator, if you sell tea and you have a nice selection of tea, you also need to have some teapots, obviously, most likely ceramic teapot, and a lot of cups. And those things are difficult to store. The plates, you can stack the plate up. Teapot, you cannot stack them up. You have to put them on the shelves. If you have 30 teapots, that's a lot of space. Now, if you have 60 or 70 teacups, that's a lot of space. Yes. So people look at everything and say, well, forget about it.
Right.
It's too bad.
These are the exact intricacies that we run into every day.
Exactly.
Especially with if I tell them, hey, you got to let this tea brew for 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever, something like that. They're like, oh, wow, really? Like before I can serve it to the customer? And I'm like, well, well, yeah, or you're going to have to tell your customer, hey, wait for a few minutes to let that do its thing, that kind of stuff. And they're like, oh, well, I don't know if that's reasonable because I need to be able to pour the tea out of a tap and get pour it into a coffee mug and give it to them. And I'm like, it just ruins the experience of the tea, so.
That's right. But you see, I was in Hong Kong a year and a half ago, and I did some consulting for a restaurant. It was a French restaurant. And for me, tea is very important and coffee is very important, Mm-hmm. And I went to see a friend of mine who actually in 2007 was the world master barista. The guy knows his coffee. He has a beautiful space in Hong Kong where he sells amazing coffee beans from all over the world. And I went to see him. I said, we are opening a restaurant on the street. We love to sell your coffee. And the guy said, oh, great. We love for that to happen. But do you have a barista on staff who's going to take care of my coffee? And I said, no, we don't, because it costs a lot of money, right? And he said, well, Jean, I'm sorry, but in this case, I will not sell you my coffee.
Right. That is exactly what we come down to, where it's like we had one of our local diners ask us, because I used to work there and I'm very good friends with their owner. And she was like, hey, we'd love to start incorporating some of your product here. And me and my lady look at each other and we're like, oh dear, we know that them and their college kid employees, and you know what I'm saying, like the people that they have working there who don't specialize in food or beverage or anything like that, they're kind of just there working, can't do justice to the quality of product that we have. And so then at that point we're like, well, should we order them a lower quality tea? And it's like, well, we don't want to support that either, and
that's right.
I don't want to be a provider of cheap commodity tea. That's not what I do. And I don't want to make that exception and get into that field just because somebody wants our product, So it's one of those deals where we're like, maybe we can figure something out, but right now I don't know what to tell you. You're not
exactly.
You're not going to be able to handle our product. Yeah.
So in China or in Macau, in a very good restaurant, they have actually a tea sommelier. So they have a lady who goes with her little cart, and they have 18 different teas, and she will brew the tea at the table, okay? And that's her job. That's what she does, And of course, being in China, it's normal. You expect to have great tea when you go to a restaurant. Absolutely. So it's just normal. It's an extra service that you provide to your clients. But also for the tea supplier in Hong Kong, that's a great thing because, he can sell a lot of amazing tea. The tea sommelier, she's certified. She knows she can talk about tea, and so it works that way. But to rely on a waiter, to serve you beautiful tea and to brew it the right way with the right water and this, and that's not going to happen in this country, except for very, very rare establishments. Right. Unfortunately.
You're almost better off.
What do you think about, especially for very high-end fine dining, for tea to be an augmented experience after the meal, in a completely different space, the restaurant has a tea parlor or kind of a loungy area you get to sit, and they can offer other beverages as well. But that could relieve that issue of the waiters wanting to turn the table, and then as far as the service, the logistics of storage of the wares and everything, that sommelier or that server has a designated space where that's their domain for all the tea. I think that'd be an interesting. Have you ever seen that, Jean, anywhere?
The only way. Actually, not in the States, but it's a good idea. I saw it in France a few times when you go to really very good restaurant, where actually the aperitif, in France, before your meal, you're going to have a cocktail. The cocktail, you will not have the cocktail at the dining table, but you will actually have your cocktail in a very beautiful space, okay, within the restaurant, obviously, but it's a different environment. And you're going to be with your friends, and you're going to have your cocktail in an amazing environment. And then the waiter will come to get you when your table is ready, when your cocktail is finished. And then you go to your table and you have your meal. And after that, you're going back to the place to have your coffee or to have your tea. So that means the table doesn't need to turn as rapidly, because actually you're going to take your tea and your coffee in a different place. And you're right, Elise, that will be the ticket, actually, where you can really offer an amazing tea service.
Mm-hmm. I think it's difficult to get people to value coffee and tea like they do liquor, though. At least around here, people value alcohol in a completely different way. So they're like, yeah, I would love to go have a cocktail and get loose and this and that, after dinner. But to have people understand that it's kind of the same experience. It's just a little bit more nuanced with tea and coffee. You don't get that same extremely strong feeling of intoxication.
That's true.
I feel like there's people don't look at tea and fine cocktails in the same way. They're like, those are not the same thing.
No, of course.
How is wine connoisseurship in your area, Joe?
Medium, I would say. There are definitely. We actually have a few of our own vineyards in the area. Prairie Berry is one of them. Belle Jolie is another one. There is definitely a market for that, especially because of our tourist population. Because we have a lot of people coming in for events, and there's, with tourism, the people who can afford to travel all the time and do these kind of things, they're also looking for those same elegant experiences. And so these wineries do pretty well. And then we have a couple of places. We sell to 2 different places that have kind of a more upscale wine selection. One of them is a coffee and wine bar. But it is a niche still. It's definitely, we have it's like the craft beer scene, it's kind of on par with that. So it exists here, definitely. And there definitely is a market for it, but it's not like extremely high or anything.
I see. Yeah, because I think you would have more success in having a receptive, audience if they're already into connoisseurship of wine.
Absolutely, connoisseurship of any sort. Yeah. That is the people that find us. Those are the ones that go out of their way to find us and connect with us and say, "Hey, we want your product," and we don't care what it costs. We want this top quality stuff. We know there is an elegance to tea. We don't know much about it ourselves, but we want to be able to offer that product. And that's happened with 3 or 4 of our clients now. They want to offer that top quality product, and then so they find us and they're like, "Hey, this kind of fits with what we're doing already. We want what you have." So it helps. That like John said in the beginning, it's about building that relationship with the owners, with the managers, so that maybe we can instill some of that passion in them, and that can roll downhill into their employees and then therefore into the clients. So that's what we shoot for, is trying to make connections with local business owners and things like that, and going, "Hey, here's what we got," and they're much more likely to bite than random Joe off the street,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like you're doing it, Joe. That's what you got to do. But I think maybe to answer the specific question you have is you just have to have patience with it. So, finding and cultivating these relationships and this connoisseurship is going to take time. If you're wanting to get your business rolling now and doing things now, you may have to compromise on quality. That's the case with a lot of our clients, actually, and the ones that are the most successful are the ones that are kind of running hybrid systems where it's like they can supply the iced tea and that's just cringeworthy, the type of tea you usually have to source for iced tea. But that gets you in the door, and that gets your brand built locally. So a good example of this is JoJo Tea in Miami. He actually came and talked with me 2 weeks ago on this live series. He has like the ice brewing machines in the restaurants with his branding on it. It's like that's the value for him. Like his margins are small in that product, and again, like he cringes having to do that business. But that's what's
a transition.
Yeah, that's what's getting his name built. With the chef community throughout Miami. And then he has his tea tasting room with like his reserve collections, and he can build that awareness over time. And he's been doing his business for about the same amount of time that I've been doing my business. He's been working in that tea room, building that connoisseurship for maybe like 3 or 4 years now, and he still hasn't made his big break. And he's going hard on it. He's like full time, all in it. So, that just kind of gives you a reference of, how much time it may end up taking you. And then on the top of that, you're working in a very different market that's not as much of like a cosmopolitan, kind of connoisseur market, and COVID on top of all of that. So,
absolutely. Yeah, we have sacrificed a couple of times for a couple of clients. We work with a local kombucha company, and they don't want like a Jinjin May or a nice Dan song in there to make their kombucha out of. They want something fairly cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much about the flavor notes of the tea as it is maybe they're looking for like, I want it organic and I want it fair trade. And that's where I'm like, ugh. We gotta have there's a big conversation here. Because that's not what you should be shopping at. But we have made some sacrifices there, and we ordered a cheaper green tea for them at one point, and so that they could do their what do they call it, like a jun tea? It's like a honey and green tea kombucha.
Yeah.
And so they sourced local honey from another one of our friends. And then they used our green tea, and it was their best-selling product because it had all 3 of our brand names on it.
Oh, cool.
And so everybody was like, yes, and it just disappeared right away. I don't know why they haven't come back for more, but nonetheless, we have made a couple of those sacrifices in our ethics,
Mm-hmm.
It's situational, though. It's not like I can be like, yeah, I'll just open it up to everybody, but it's like you have to be able to say no sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you totally can say no all the time too. Like if you want to hold that standard, like what I do, you can do that, but you have to have a lot more patience, and maybe hustle a little bit harder. But I'm grateful that the industry and the market has supported kind of my stubborn ethics on things. But again, I don't try to sell to restaurants, and that's one reason why you don't see me all over town trying to get into the restaurants, because I know that challenge is that's there, and I feel like my efforts can be better invested in better educating the consumer market, so that you can I'm working from the other angle of creating that demand, creating that awareness. That when the consumer goes to a fancy restaurant, we'll ask about tea. That was one thing that was hard about the Slanted Door. They actually had I wouldn't say it was the best tea program, but they had a tea program, and they were trying, and I challenged when I went there and I ordered tea. I definitely challenged them, and they had the manager come out and give me their card and said, hey, we do want to meet with you and up our game. And relationships like that are something that I'm willing to invest in, even though that's not the core, because it can be a part of the movement, a part of that FOMO culture, just like with Mr. Coco or something like that. That reminds me, is Mr. Coco open again, Jean?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the Palm is going to reopen soon.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Palms is going to be the last one of their properties.
That's right. They say that Palm probably December or something like that.
Oh, my goodness.
Which really is a huge bummer.
Yeah.
Because the property is brand new. Not brand new, but they've been spending so much money into this property. And unfortunately, COVID arrived and they just wiped out all their efforts.
Mm-hmm.
So in a case like that, when you reopen a big hotel like that with maybe 8 high-end food and beverage outlets, I mean, you need to spend so much money in marketing to restart everything. It's going to be very painful for them.
Yeah.
Very painful.
Yeah, it's
So
already...
to answer your question, I don't think Mr. Coco is opening.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, I heard an interesting statistic a little while ago. So, I don't know how fast the casinos started opening back up in Vegas. But there was like that initial wave of when a few did around the country. And I don't know if Jean's familiar with this, but I live 20 miles. I'm from actually 20 miles from where I live now. It's called Deadwood, South Dakota, and it's a little gambling town. I mean, that's essentially what it is.
Okay.
It's kind of like a mini Las Vegas with a Wild West culture. So yeah, but I don't know if you've seen that. There's a TV series called Deadwood, and that's the town that I'm from. But when the casinos started opening up, there were 19 casinos in the entire nation that were open, and Deadwood was 11 of them.
Wow.
So that tells you how fast our gambling community was like, yes, get back at it, because this place will collapse without that.
That's right. That's right.
It just can't stay. It's not sustainable unless we have that constant flow of people coming through here. Because not only is it affecting the gambling establishments, but therefore it's affecting all of the other restaurants and everything else around the area. Nobody's coming into the area because they come here to gamble and then enjoy everything else in the process. So yeah, it's been interesting watching this, because just overnight it was like boom, the whole place just opened right back up. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you look at Macau, for example, Macau it's a small town. It's 500,000 people. It's an island as well. But even though we are small, we represent 6 times the revenue of Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just an amazing thing. Chinese people, they love to gamble, and they will, and they just gamble like there is no tomorrow, and they spend a lot of money. But so for the very first time, since there is casino in Macau, they closed down the casino, all of them, for COVID-19. And obviously, all the casino, they don't like to be closed down. That's for sure. They don't like to lose money. They are not in that business at all. Mm-hmm. So they push the politician to reopen the casino. And the politician, are you sure you want to do that? Yeah, let's open. So about a month and a half ago, they reopened the casino.
Yep.
The politician said, okay, you reopen the casino, that's fine. We will not close them down again, but we are not going to reopen the borders. So without the borders, there is no tourism. Mm-hmm. Right. Without the tourists, there is no gambling. So basically, all those casinos, they don't work with local. Local don't have the money to go to those kind of casinos. Right. So I mean, actually, they are not doing well at all. And it would have been much better for them to just stay closed.
Yep, because now they wouldn't have had the overhead. They wouldn't have the operation.
That's right. And when you look at the overhead, a place like Venetian in Macau, they employ 10,000 people.
Right.
That's a lot of overhead,
Right. I mean, it's even the same here. It's just a ton of overhead, and and it's like, are you really making that back, or are you really kind of just going? You're moving backwards at this point,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But you see, for example, for MGM here in MGM in Las Vegas, of course, they have many casinos. It's not only MGM; they have a lot of casinos. But their expense, the operation expense on a daily basis, is $14 million. So they really want to reopen the business as soon as possible. And that's very understandable.
Yeah, that's madness, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Gambling is something around here that definitely the locals are just as wrapped up in it as anybody. So,
that's good. How come they have so much money to go gambling? What kind of industry do you have over there?
I don't think they do. I don't think they do have the money. I think they just spend it anyway. That's one of those things.
That's interesting.
So it's kind of like it's an addiction thing. very much so. It's definitely a plague around here. You know.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's kind of hard to watch. You know, I grew up in that town, and that's what you see is you see people just spending every last dime until they don't have any more. You know, and it's tough. It's tough to watch. You know, it's not people like, oh, I'm going to go out for the weekend and have fun. It's like, no, I need to get up there every day, every other day, and spend, you know, $1,000 every day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, especially with the older folk, because I find, you know, the older generations, like, let's say, you know, 60, 70 and up, they don't really know what to do with their time anymore. You know, the technology is kind of over a lot of people's heads. Some of the modern stuff is just, they're kind of just like, they're overwhelmed by it, so they don't delve into that. So the only thing these older folk have to do is to go gambling. And I pick people up. I work part-time for a taxi company as well. And I deal with that constantly. It's like, well, I don't know what else to do. So I'm just going to go to Deadwood. And they just go up there and blow $1,000, and then they come back and they're like, well, that sucks, you know? And then they go do it again next week. And then they go do it again next week. It's like, oh man, go somewhere and do something else with your money. But they don't know what to do. They're lost, you know? They're ignorant.
You got to open a tea casino, Joe.
That's right.
Man. I am not getting involved. You couldn't pay me enough to get involved in the gambling business. There is no way. That's one of those I will say no things, you know. No, we sell to one place in Deadwood, and it's inside of a casino, but it's a very high-end, like, gastronomic type restaurant, you know. They have like 5 things on the menu, and it constantly changes. And he's a good. The chef is a good friend of ours. He's very well trained and that kind of stuff. And so we sacrificed dealing with the casinos for him because we're like, we know you will do justice to our product. And it's not necessarily the people that are coming into the restaurant are probably gamblers, or at least in some way. But there is a big population of like families that come to Deadwood as well for the, like, that Wild West type cultural aspect, because we were one of the first gold mining areas in the United States. We were one of the ones that got hit big with the gold rush, and so there's a lot of like mining artifacts and things like that. The culture around here is really rich, so you find a lot of families coming through and things like that. So it's not just all gamblers, but there is a big percentage of gamblers, and they're the reason that this place does as well as it does, I think. So we sacrificed and worked with him, and but we haven't heard much from him since COVID. I know they shut down for a little while. I think they might, because he had just opened before this all started up. So it's one of those deals where, like, he might be on the fence of like, I don't know what he's going to do, you know.
That's really sad, yeah.
So we're kind of waiting to see what happens there, but.
So, yeah, I mean, I think in relation to what Jean and I have been talking about, and, you know, to your overarching question that you had about, you know, how to value yourself, Joe, I think that this could be a good time for you to kind of to set that standard of what you want to be, and what you want your value to be, and the price on it. And don't be afraid to overvalue it, or not overvalue it, just value it, period. You know, and if that means that your product's going to be, you know, 2 or 3 times more expensive than, you know, like the other restaurant fancy brands that we know about and have talked about, don't be afraid about that, you know, and just continue putting in the work to build the trust, to build the connoisseurship. And, you know, hopefully you have other avenues to support you, either through other work or through, you know, even commodity tea sales, if that what you, and that could just be like off brand. That could be, you know, off catalog, you know, like anytime Tealet will do any like large scale brokering. You know, some brands come in and they're like, yeah, we want to have the direct trade. We want to work with this specific grower, but we're looking for this specific lower grade of tea that I usually don't carry in my catalog. Like, we'll do that business, but it's like off brand, you know, it's off catalog. You know, you can build your catalog and build that high level, and no one's going to criticize you. You know, like the only thing that's going to
nobody knows how, because they don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, so right. No one's going to say anything anything against it. They're just going to accept it and say, wow, Joe's like, he's like the tea expert. Look how expensive his products are. Like, they must be like really high value, you know? And it may mean that you're not going to be selling off the shelf immediately. But, you know, that's the work that you're going to have to put in to establish that, you know? And in time, over the next couple of years, as the restaurant industry figures itself out, you know, with the things that Jean and I were talking about, I mean, I think the overarching kind of theme of our conversation has been that dining is going to have to like diversify itself and find additional value adds to just the food itself. And an elevated tea experience could be one of those. Maybe not every restaurant's going to do it, but like here and there, that will be one of those diversifying factors that a chef can incorporate in their restaurant to, you know, define their value. And then you'll be right there. You'll be the top in the town. You'll be the top in the whole Midwest if you want, you know? You just,
fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the compromises that we have, I wouldn't call it a compromise, but we are, you know, the name of our business is Sage and Cedar Herbal Wellness. So, you know, I'm an herbalist by trade, and herbs and just like plants and plant medicine are kind of my specialty. And I consider tea leaf, Camellia sinensis, another one of those plant medicines. But we have kind of split the two apart a little bit rather than offering them all to everyone universally. We've kind of taken tea and put it in its own category, and then we've taken herbal teas and put them in their own category. And I find most of our wholesale clients, most of the restaurants and stuff that we work more with the herbal stuff because I think it sounds better. You know, one of our clients just got our blackberry sage blend, and they made a cocktail out of it and all sorts of stuff. Has no tea leaf in it at all. It's got blackberries, blackberry leaf, raspberry leaf, sage, and orange peel in it. And so they made a cocktail out of that, and that sold great. But then we try and be like, hey, here's our nice, you know, autumn harvest black tea, and you know, everybody's like, what? You know, and it's just black tea, and so they just pass right over it. So the fruity kind of more floofy sounding stuff seems to do better in the restaurants, and so that's kind of what we've come to a compromise there. It's like, well, our restaurants for the most part are just going to sell these herbal teas, and then it'll be up to us and our personal, like our retail sales, to actually get people to value a den song like they would, you know, a blackberry sage herbal tea. So,
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what we've had to. We pander to that. It's like, all right, we'll give you like floofier, you know, like fruitier, sound flowery blends, just so that it actually catches people's attention, because they don't know how to value a nice multiple steeping, like, you know, yin gen or something like that. They just don't know what to do with it, you know. Mm-hmm. But you can steep an herbal tea one time for 5 minutes and it's done anyway. You don't re-steep it. It's not processed the same way.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it seems like you've got it figured out, you know. But yeah,
it's just those numbers that drive me nuts. It's like, what do I charge per gram? You know what I mean? I'm like, there's so many factors, you know. It just
whatever it is, triple it.
I mean, that's almost the realistic advice. Because I always undersell myself.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Like I told you, I would wake up and do this even if I didn't make money off of it. Yeah. I would share tea and herbs with people even if it was not a business. You know, I would get friends together and I would share it with the community and do things like that, even if there was zero money in it. So at that point, I'm like, well, I don't know how to value it, so I'm just going to give it away. Luckily, my partner, my lady, is like, no. She's like, no, we have to have a business here, honey. You know, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll for it, you know. So I struggle with that. It's just hard to put numbers to something that isn't monetary to me. There's no monetary value in my heart to a good cup of tea.
I understand.
They're unrelated as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. You know.
So like that passion right there is what's going to help you succeed. But what the business sense, like it is important to overvalue. And the thing that's cool in wholesale business, like when you're selling to a restaurant, is that you can price very high, and depending on the nature of your relationship with that buyer, with that restaurant, you can offer discounts to adjust the price to what you want to charge a particular account.
Right.
And a lot of our clients do that. I think that's a pretty common. Jean, is that a pretty common practice in your experience?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So yeah, on your catalog, like, put the prices very high, and then if you're selling,
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. Just to value your product, And tea, tea can be expensive. Don't get me wrong, but if you go to visit a restaurateur or a chef and you tell them, I'm selling premium tea, they don't really know about the price, and quite frankly, they don't really care about the price because they are buying Wagyu beef, they are buying foie gras, caviar, those kind of things who are extremely expensive, so they know exactly, that they will be willing to buy great tea, even if it's expensive.
Yeah.
The thing is not to buy the tea. The tea is to serve. The thing is to serve the tea properly.
Right. That's the value.
This is the difficulty.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And also, I'm sorry. Please.
Well, basically, we've just, we've come. About half of our clients have not even half of the people that we have interacted with in relation to selling tea. A bunch of those have not bitten, if you will. But the higher end ones are like, I don't care what it costs. They're like, just give it to me. The lower end ones are like, oh, that's too cheap. I'll just sell Tazo or whatever, and we're like, all right, I guess, whatever, you can sell the tea bags or the cheap loose leaf tea that's just coming from some bulk distributor, you know? And so those aren't, I guess we just take it as like, okay, that's just not our market. That's not where we belong. Luckily, the connoisseurship of this area is just on the rise every day. Every day there's some, nice little mom and pop organic type shop opening it up. They're like really trying to serve like quality ingredients and small menus and put some love and pride into their product. And we have them on.
That's right.
It's great. So, but we're kind of in a different area than a lot of places too. So.
Yeah, Joe, I think you're good to go. You just just values. Don't be afraid to value yourself and your work, and really, if it becomes a problem and being able to close an account, you can always negotiate, right? But what your upfront value is, including on your retail too, don't undersell yourself. Because you put a lot of work in addition to your passion and everything, like if you're doing trainings and all of that. Now that is something that is hard to sell to a restaurant, is like training. So that's why
we've done that. The 2 times we've done it, that they've actually gotten all their staff together to do it. We've just done it for free because we want them to know how. Just don't disrespect my team. That's all. They
won't value it enough to pay it like as a consulting fee or something like that. So that's why you kind of have to like package everything together in your loose leaf.
Right.
So all of that training, all of that time that you would need to put into that hand holding should be in the price of your tea.
Right, like curating their menus.
Yeah.
Because we do all of that stuff. It's kind of a hands-off process for them. Like they don't have to worry about it. We take care of it.
You need to.
We
that's an important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we assess the restaurant and their clientele, and we're like, this is what your clients will probably like, and this is what will sell at your restaurant, and this is what you can afford, and all of that consulting stuff. We do all of that. So I like how you say just figure that into the price of the tea itself,
And then
they won't value that consultation.
No, they don't. And not only do they don't value it, that's just the standard in the industry. I mean, even alcohol distributors, wine distributors, they're also including all of those free services in with the price of their product.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've been chatting for close to 2 hours now. Jean, thank you so much. This was awesome.
It was an awesome conversation.
You're welcome.
I
It
hope
was nice to meet you, Joe.
You as well, John.
The best of
Absolutely.
luck.
Yeah,
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the best of luck over there, too. I mean, I hope everything kind of gets back on its feet. I'm not so worried about here because it's really small. So it's like, what, you know, we don't have as far to climb back to get to, you know, normal, if you will. But a lot of these bigger establishments that are more high risk and dealing with more, just more revenue in general, it's going to be harder for them. So
Definitely.
absolutely. So good luck to all that for sure.
Thank you. Keep in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I gotta come by for another meal, Jean.
Absolutely. Anytime.
I'll bring dessert again.
We'll talk again. Yeah. Thank you, Elise.
Thanks, Sean. Hey, today. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Joe. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Have a great
Cheers.
week.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
We'll see you
Much
next
love.
time.
Aloha.
Bye.
Bye-bye.